Hi. I don't know why I did a PowerPoint. I always sort of have PowerPoint envy. Um, I usually just, when I talk, I usually just have a bit of paper. I've got a bit of paper with me, which has got all my notes in case that went down. And I've got it on my phone as well. But I came up with some reflections on the life of Joseph. This was a question that Jeremy put in an email to me. What are your reflections so far, kind of thing? Do you want to talk about any of them? Now, Mike told me I can just press this and it'll move forward. I'm pressing the forward one, Mike, so you might need to do it for me. Wonderful. Okay, so I've kind of listened to all the talks, and I've done a bit of not a deep dive, that's a kind of modern term, isn't it? It's like calling everything super and stuff like that. What I did was when I was going to work, I've got about a half-hour journey to work. So on the way in, on the way back, I had the Bible read to me from my phone from Genesis. I didn't start right at the beginning because I wanted to skip all the, messy creation stuff. But I thought I want to get near the life of Joseph and just kind of hear it again for myself. And Shelley told me not to say this, but I really wanted to summarize Joseph's life very quickly. So people that use words like super, what would you do to kind of get a quick summary of Joseph's life? Well, I did what the modern world does. I asked ChatGPT and said, can you give me a summary of Joseph's life in 25 words? And apart from that, and sometimes he got in his own way, which was my contribution, this is what was given to me. Joseph's life in Genesis teaches us resilience, forgiveness, and purpose. From the pit to the palace, he endured trials, forgave betrayal, and fulfilled his destiny. And I added, and sometimes he got in his own way. Some people say it's a bit like riding an electric bike. It's a bit of a cheat, isn't it? But I don't think so. I also used a computer. I sat in a room that had electric lights and heating in it. I had a coffee from a kettle. I had all these aids to help me. And so I thought I'm going to ask and see what this artificial intelligence knows about Joseph. And it knew quite a bit. I decided on a theme before I did this, and the theme was past, present, future. I'm going to try again, Mike. No, you're going to have to do it for me. Sorry. Maybe it's gone to sleep. Maybe it's gone off. So I did a past, present, future, and in order to try and stick to time and summarize my life very quickly, what I did yesterday was, in fact, was it yesterday? It was yesterday, wasn't it? I wrote a load of one-liners about my life to try and go through, because I looked at Joseph's life and I thought, wow. I looked at Genesis and I thought, wow. If the Bible was written by us and not inspired by God, if you asked some modern-day communicator to write the Bible, they would edit out all the bad stuff, wouldn't they? If you listen to Joseph, if you listen to his life, in fact, if you go a bit further on from Joseph's life, wonderful as it was and difficult as it was, it sets up the perfect situation for all the Israelites to become slaves later on. So, Genesis flows into Exodus, and in Exodus they're all slaves. And God has to go and rescue them. So there's this kind of cyclical nature of our lives. And so what I decided was to look at my past. And so I've got some one-liners. It should just take about a minute. So hopefully I won't run out too soon. So my past. Immigrants. Parents were immigrants, and I was born here. Parents were trying to get established. Trauma and tough times. My dad killed someone in our house. My mum and my dad went to prison, and my mum got found not guilty, and my dad got a lesser charge of manslaughter. Quite traumatic for me and my sisters, but alongside that, God was with us. There was a guy called John Piercy who used to run the London City Mission, and John used to pick us up from the streets and take us to Sunday school and give us sweets for learning Bible stories. I sometimes think about the kind of safeguarding aspects of that today. just wouldn't happen, would it? Just pick you up, no forms to fill in, and then just drop you back with a tract for your parents as well. Try and convert them while you're at it. So my dad went to prison, and we spent the next 4 or 5 years visiting him in prisons. And on one occasion, watching one of my relatives get attacked while we were visiting my dad in prison. And growing up, the people that knew the person that died were relatives of ours. And so it was very difficult. We were all it was a very close-knit immigrant community. My dad got out when decimal money came up. And I'm going to try and go forward, see if Mike's fixed it. Well done. Yeah. Well done, Mike. Thank you. And so, yeah, I picked that because of the rings, because I thought, we've all got a past. We've all got some experience. So, yeah, my dad came out during decimal money come in, and then my parents split up not long after that. Sorry, I'm really trying not to cry because I'm like such a emotionally incontinent person. But so, yeah, my parents split up. My mum goes to Cyprus and she says to me, would you like to come shopping with me on the way to the airport? And I go with her, so I end up in Cyprus. My dad comes and takes me back forcibly. Not pleasant. Some of the stuff that happened in that, I've reframed it over the years. So there was one bit where I was kidnapped by some people that were with my dad to take me back, and I've reframed that as quite a funny story, because during the kidnap, my legs were flailing. I was about 9, and I kicked the guy that was holding me in the face, and he only had one tooth, and it came out, and then everyone took the mickey out of him for losing his tooth. But it was quite traumatic at the time, but I've kind of learnt to reframe some things. Came back, I was clever, I was at school, I was not academic. As a result, I found crime before I found drugs, and crime was an outlet for my kind of problem-solving skills, really. So for me, committing crime wasn't a moral outrage. It was like, there's money in that till over there, how do I get that into my pocket? So it was a problem-solving exercise, was how I rationalized it at the time. And then I discovered drugs. People think there's a what's the word? A causal factor between crime and drugs. You find drugs and then you start committing crime. I found crime first. And I know there's a correlation, but there's not a causal factor. I work in the drug and alcohol field, and it's quite annoying when people sort of equate drug users with crime. There is a lot of crime committed by drug users, but if you're middle class and you've got the money and you can go out and buy drugs and alcohol and you don't commit crime for that, you still got a problem, even though you may not have crime as a complicating factor. Even with that, so I discovered crime and drugs, then my dad dies. But again, God's in the background with me. And John's still there, the mission is still there. All the old ladies in the mission are praying for me to get help. At one point, they've got a 24-hour prayer thing that goes on around the world, made up of wonderful little old ladies who just keep praying. And a lady called Miss Bunce, sort of about this big, who always pulls you down and goes, come here, young man. She said to me at one stage, you're in the top 10 for prayers around the world. And so God is still there. And through them, I find the elder and I find rehab, and I start to experience God. God's explained, and we begin to live him out. Because until then, my understanding of God was, you confess. You watched Billy Graham on a video at Aston Villa or somewhere big, and then at the end of it, you kneel down in front of the telly, and then you come to God. And then 2 weeks later, you've committed so many sins, you've got to do it all again. When I get to Yeldo, they explain, no, you don't have to do that, but you do have to walk with God constantly. Then my mum dies while I'm at rehab, which was a real point at which I could do some comparisons, because when my dad died, I went deeper into what I was doing at the time. When my mum died, again, amazing set of circumstances, because she was in Cyprus, being looked after by my sister and my niece. both my sisters and my niece, and being helped by some American Christians on the airbase there. But she manages to phone me in rehab at 4 a.m. or something ridiculous. And then she dies. And I'm able to tell her, I'm kind of getting on with my life. Anyway, I come out of there. I meet Shelley eventually. God puts us together. Harry and Max come along. We're here. We're worshipping at this church. We get married here. And then God decides to use my past as an asset. I become a Yodel staff member. I work in the drugs field, on and on and on. And I guess the question I'm asking is, where's God in your past? He's there. Maybe you've got to look for him in it. Because, some of the things that happened to me were pretty awful. And some of the things I did as a result of that were pretty awful as well. But God was there, somewhere in it. And when I look back on Joseph's life, I actually take some encouragement because I'm not the perfect Christian. And so therefore, when I look at them, I think, wow, I fit right in. The next question I was going to ask was, what's going on for you now? For me, I'm still, God's in my present. I'm still working in the drugs field. He's still using me. Our kids are growing up. They're making their own way. We're trying to be as present as we can in the present, and we're trying to be, as open to God as we can. And the last question I was going to ask was about the future. There's a really good quote here that a guy called Justin told me about. It's, which is more important, asked Big Panda, the journey or the destination? And Tiny Dragon says, the company. And so I don't know what the future is. I don't know what it is for me, much less for you. I don't know what the destination is. It could be turbulence, pain, and death. It could be blessing, calm waters and, floating off into a great future. But whatever it is, I think the company makes a difference. And so I guess my future, I believe, is in God's hands. And I'm walking with him in that company. I know I'm in good company with him. And I have some purpose and meaning because of that. And I guess the question I would ask you is, who's in your future? That's it.